Blue collar, white collar, black professors, white scholars, politicians, Dalai Lamas. Everybody in the whole wide world need hope if I be honest. I'm in that number.
Welcome to another episode of Rob Report. I'm your host, Robert BOBTV Brown. How you doing today? And Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders go on a toe-to-toe grudge match, WWE style, on the floor of the Senate. Watch this.
President.
Senator from Kentucky.
Trump derangement syndrome has officially come to the Senate. The hatred for the president is so intense that partisans would rather risk war than give diplomacy a chance. Does anybody remember that Ronald Reagan sat down with Gorbachev and we lessened the nuclear tensions? We need to still have those openings. Nobody is saying or excusing Russia's meddling in our elections. Absolutely, we should protect the integrity of our elections. But simply bringing the hatred of the president to the Senate floor in order to say, we're done with diplomacy, we're going to add more sanctions and more sanctions. You know what? I would rather that we still have open channels of discussion with the Russians. Kennedy, at the height of the Cold War, had a direct line to Khrushchev, and it may have prevented the end of the world. Should we be so crazy about partisanship that we now say, we don't want to talk to the Russians, we're not going to have relations with the Russians? We should stand firm and say, stay the hell out of our elections, but we should not stick our head in the ground and say, we're not going to talk to them. I would like to see the Russians leave Ukraine. I think we could do it through diplomacy. We're not going to have it if we don't talk to them. I would like to see the Russians help more with North Korea, with denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We're not going to have it if we just simply heap more sanctions on and say we're not going to talk to the Russians, and anybody that talks to the Russians has committed treason. For goodness sakes, we have the former head of the CIA, John Brennan, gallivanting across TV, now being paid for his opinion, to call the president treasonous. This has got to stop. This is crazy hatred of the president. This is crazy partisanship that is driving this. For goodness sakes, we don't excuse Russia's behavior in our election, but we don't have to have war. We can still have engagement. We have engaged Russia throughout 70 years while also acknowledging the imperfections of their system, the parts of their system that we vehemently disagree with. The lack of freedom, the lack of human rights, and yet we had open channels of negotiation, open channels of communication. So I could not object more strongly to this. Mr. President, I object.
Mr. President. Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Senator from Vermont.
The senator from Kentucky just told us he wants dialogue with Russia. He wants diplomacy with Russia, that he thinks it's important that we communicate with Russia. I agree. Who disagrees with that? There is not one word in this resolution that suggests that the United States of America should not aggressively engage in diplomacy with Russia to ease the tensions that exist between the two countries. What the senator said is totally irrelevant to what is in this resolution. What this resolution says is we're going to tell Russia, stop interfering in our elections. What this resolution is about is to tell Russia to stop interfering with democratic countries all over the world in their elections. What this resolution is about is saying that we should implement the sanctions overwhelmingly voted by Congress. What this resolution is about is that we will not accept interference with the ongoing investigation of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and that what this resolution says is the president must cooperate with the investigation of Mr. Mueller. That's what this resolution is about. It has nothing to do with ending diplomacy with Russia at all. So that is just inaccurate, and I would hope that if not today, in the very near future, Republicans will join Democrats and do the right thing in our effort to preserve American democracy. Thank you, Mr. President.
So right there, you got Senator Sanders admitting that he's a Democrat. All right, to each his own. You're not vouching for people in general, Bernie Sanders. You're fighting for the Democratic side, following the Democratic narrative of Russian collusion, and that Trump still may have something to do with it, and Trump need to cooperate. Now, there's a lot I can say about this. First of all, oh God, you're forcing me to say Rand Paul is right. Rand Paul is righter than right. We should, and you agreed with him, Mr. Sanders, and people he agreed with him. We should have talks. We should have dialogue. We should have diplomacy concerning peace talks with Russia. Second only to us in nuclear power, strength, region, you name it. Second thing is this Trump derangement syndrome. You know what Trump derangement is? That's when Democrats, some independents, and even some Republicans hate Trump so much that they're looking for something on him. Worse than road cops looking for a reason to put black men in jail where they plant drugs on them and throw them in jail. Looking for a reason. I can't stand that mother. I'm going to get him. If it's the last thing to do, we're going to find something on him. We can't stand him because he beat the so-called inevitable. Your so-called inevitable sucked as a campaigner, but that's another story. So Rand Paul is right. This Russian thing, this Trump derangement syndrome, all this stuff is moot. First of all, every investigator said it has nothing to do with the election. Okay? And if you want to call meddling in elections, some Facebook memes, some people start some Facebook groups to pit war between Trump and Clinton. It's an election. You're supposed to be pitting between Trump and Clinton. You're supposed to state your point and state why somebody should vote for Trump. State your point why somebody's supposed to vote for Clinton. That's freedom of speech. People have a right to do that. I'm not even going to go into detail on that because Facebook said most of that stuff happened after the election. It's a few means. Somebody bought it, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is Bernie Sanders is wrong. Rand Paul is right. And Bernie Sanders got the nerves to come up with a resolution about undermining elections when the Democratic Party, the one he's speaking for, undermined his very own election. When there was rigging of the polls, rigging of the primaries, throwing people off the voting rolls, the closed primary system, all this stuff, he won't even stand against that. He will not talk about ranked choice voting. He will not talk about blockchain voting. Things can eliminate even Russia from interfering in that. The only thing Russia is guilty is using propaganda to convince people's mind not to vote for Hillary Clinton or not to vote for Trump. Either way, this thing wasn't going to go the way Russia wanted to go. They are just so mad that that man who has no experience, a reality show knucklehead, beat the so-called inevitable. It eats them up. It tears them up. Everybody has gotten derangement. And these narratives about Trump, PP dossier and all that has been proven false. Then you come to find out that Hillary phone was hacked by China. And then you talk about the DNC server who the FBI still to this day have never seen. They're trusting the word of a third party who is not even worth 2 cents. And they're making up, they could be fabricating these indictments, knowing very well these people are in another country and will not be extradited into this country. You know why they will not be extradited? Because either they're maybe trumped up charges or they made up. Folks, the bottom line is we're the kings. We're the best at meddling in elections. I'm going to talk about it in another segment. We're the best at meddling in election. We meddle in Russian election recently. Russia meddled in our election. We meddle in more elections than anybody in the world. We go even as far as having somebody removed, turning public opinion against that regime or that leadership we call regime, but it's really leadership, no different from us. We pit the people against that regime so they can have opposition, and we fund that opposition to get the people thrown out. That's worse than convincing somebody through some Facebook memes that Hillary Clinton is of the devil and Donald Trump is of Jesus Christ. Get out of here with this stuff, man. Get out of here with this stuff. And shame on you, Bernie Sanders. to get up there and promote a resolution that impose sanctions on a people, not the government, on a people who had nothing to do it. Let's say if somebody in Russia did do it. Let's say the Russian government did it. The sanctions should be on the Russian government, not to the Russian people. But who are we? Stick our chest in. What if somebody puts sanction on our government? What if people put sanction on the Russian people? What if the world turn around and one-sidedly go against us and put sanctions on us? Is that fair to the people who had nothing to do with it? Was it fair to the people of Iran who had, when we posed sanction on them? Iraq, when we posed sanction on them? You name it. We like I said, we're the rigging kings, we're the interfering kings, and we're the imposing sanction kings. Now, when somebody else do it, we want to be appalled. Nerves of us undermining American democracy. Let me tell you something. Hillary Clinton in the DNC server does not represent America. They will let you know in the previous case with the DNC versus the people of Bernie Sanders supporters that they're a private organization. And they are not part of this government. They may get funding. They may run under that party label, but they are not the government. We, the people, are the government. So you are wrong, Bernie Sanders. Rand Paul was right. And the nerves of you to put out a resolution to deal with Russia on interfering in an election, and you do not have the guts or the ball, you got a yellow spine, you are a coward because you won't do the same thing in your own election. That again is the definition of the heck. You're allowing the Democratic Party to pimp you and manipulate you. I thought you was a revolutionary. I thought you wanted to start a movement. I'm done, man. You're wrong, bro. You're wrong. Hey, if you like the content, please like it, share it through all the social media platforms. If you have not subscribed, make sure you stop me right now and subscribe. Don't just subscribe, but hit the notification bell like that, a little bell. You gotta click that. That'll let you know when I'm dropping a video. Whoop, there it is. And by all means, if you want to support through Patreon, I appreciate people who appreciate the program and want to donate to the cause on BOBTV. And I'm Robert Brown with the Rob Report.